The hospital ship Mercy hung like a silver promise against the infinite darkness of space, its gleaming hull a testament to humanity's most noble aspirations. Dr. Elena Rodriguez moved between holographic displays, her movements a carefully choreographed dance of medical precision and technological mastery. Around her, the bridge hummed with an intensity that spoke of both hope and desperation. The Vorontal plague had ravaged entire star systems, leaving behind ghostly remnants of once thriving civilizations. Elena's cybernetic eye, a marvel of human engineering that blended biological intuition with quantum computing, scanned multiple data streams simultaneously. Each holographic display told a story of suffering, planetary infection rates, genetic mutation patterns, and the desperate race against time. Vaccine synthesis at 89.6%, announced Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura, his fingers dancing across a translucent interface. Beside him, Dr. Amarada carefully monitored the complex molecular structures that might save millions of lives. They were more than a medical team. They were humanity's last hope for an entire alien civilization. The Mercy was unlike any medical vessel in galactic history. Designed as a mobile research center and emergency response platform, it carried technologies that pushed the boundaries of medical science. Experimental nano-regenerative systems lined its medical bays. Quantum entanglement communication arrays allowed instantaneous transmission of medical data across impossible distances. Every system was a testament to human innovation, born from centuries of collaborative scientific advancement. Elena remembered the mission briefing. The Vorontal were not just another alien species facing extinction. They were a civilization on the brink of complete collapse. The plague had decimated their population, destroying their social structures and threatening to erase generations of cultural memory. Humanity's response was immediate and unconditional, total medical intervention, regardless of political complications. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. The ship's quantum AI, nicknamed Hippocrates by the crew, detected something unusual. Elena's cybernetic eye flickered, processing multiple sensor inputs almost faster than human consciousness could comprehend. Captain Rodriguez, the AI's neutral voice cut through the bridge's ambient noise. I'm detecting an anomalous energy signature at the edge of our sensor range. Lieutenant Marcus Chen, the ship's tactical officer, leaned forward. His hands moved across the sensor controls, triangulating the mysterious reading. It doesn't match any known Vorontal or allied vessel signatures, he reported, a note of caution in his voice. The bridge fell into a moment of tense silence. The Mercy was a hospital ship, protected under multiple galactic humanitarian protocols. No rational civilization would dare attack a vessel so clearly marked as a medical relief mission. And yet, something was approaching. Elena's training kicked in. Years of working in conflict zones had taught her that space was never truly peaceful, and compassion could sometimes be the most dangerous weapon of all. She activated the ship's enhanced defensive protocols. Not weapons, but advanced shielding and evasive systems that represented the pinnacle of human defensive technology. Hippocrates, she called to the ship's eye. Full sensor sweep. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with. The next few moments would define not just a mission, but potentially the relationship between humanity and the wider galactic community. The Mercy carried more than medical supplies. It carried the promise of hope, the potential for healing, and the unwavering human commitment to preserving life against impossible odds. Little did they know that something was about to change everything. A moment that would transform a simple medical mission into a turning point of galactic history. The first plasma burst transformed the Mercy's pristine medical bay into a hellscape of superheated metal and fractured hope. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously as the ship's advanced warning systems struggled to comprehend the sudden, catastrophic attack. Dr. Elena Rodriguez moved with a precision that defied human limitations. Her cybernetic eye's augmented processing systems kicked into overdrive, analyzing the attack patterns, calculating survival probabilities, and activating emergency protocols in microseconds. Around her, the carefully constructed world of medical precision shattered into a symphony of destruction. Emergency containment protocols. She shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Hidden compartments throughout the ship began to seal, transforming sections of the Mercy into potential survival zones. These were not standard safety measures, but carefully engineered human innovations designed for the most extreme scenarios imaginable. Lieutenant Marcus Chen's tactical training erupted into action. What had been a peaceful medical mission was now a fight for survival. His hands flew across emergency control panels, rerouting power, activating backup systems that most of the crew didn't even know existed. The ship's AI, Hippocrates, began its most critical function, ensuring as much crew survival as possible. Dr. Amaradayap was already moving through the medical bay, her movements a blur of controlled panic. Years of working in humanitarian crisis zones had prepared her for impossible situations. She activated emergency containment fields, protecting critical medical research and preserving the vaccine prototypes that represented humanity's hope for the Vorental civilization. The ship's internal structure began to transform. Adaptive nanomaterials in the hull started to reconfigure, creating emergency barriers, sealing breaches, redistributing structural integrity. It was more than simple damage control. It was a living, breathing system of survival that represented the pinnacle of human engineering. 17 survivors, Hippocrates announced coldly. Optimal escape probability, 37.2%. Those 17 represented more than just individuals. They were a carefully selected team, each chosen not just for their medical expertise, but for their ability to survive, to adapt, to fight back when necessary. Hidden compartments throughout the ship began to reveal equipment that blurred the line between medical and tactical gear. Alina's emergency survival suit was a marvel of human innovation. Nano-adaptive materials that could seal radiation breaches, built-in medical diagnostics, communication systems that could function in the most extreme environments. As she moved, the suit seemed to become an extension of her own body, a perfect fusion of human determination and technological innovation. The Krellnack's attack had been precise, almost surgical, but they had made one critical miscalculation. They hadn't just attacked a ship. They had awakened a species known for turning tragedy into an art form of survival and retribution. Escape pods began to launch, each one a carefully engineered survival capsule. These were not simple emergency vehicles, but sophisticated mini-ships equipped with advanced survival technologies. Quantum-encrypted communication systems, adaptive camouflage, medical regeneration chambers. Each pod was a testament to human ingenuity. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura worked furiously to preserve the mission's most critical asset, the research data. Quantum-encrypted data cores began to duplicate and distribute, ensuring that even if the physical ship was destroyed, the knowledge would survive. Every piece of medical research, every vaccine prototype, every bit of hope for the Vorental would be preserved. As the last escape pods launched, Alina took a final look at the disintegrating ship. The Mercy had been more than a vessel. It had been a symbol of humanity's commitment to healing, to hope, to life itself. Now it would become something else, the first chapter in a story of unprecedented human response. 17 survivors drifted into the cold darkness of space, but they were not victims. They were witnesses. They were survivors. They were humanity's answer to an unprovoked attack. The real mission was just beginning. The escape pods drifted through the vast emptiness of space, each a fragile bubble of survival against the infinite darkness. Inside the lead pod, Dr. Alina Rodriguez interfaced with the quantum communication system, her cybernetic eye-processing data streams that would have overwhelmed an unaugmented human mind. Hippocrates, she called softly, begin comprehensive data reconstruction. The AI's response was immediate. Fragments of sensor logs, communication records, and tactical data began to reassemble themselves. A digital autopsy of the attack that would become humanity's most damning evidence. Each piece of data was a potential weapon, each fragment a testament to the calculated nature of the Krellnack's assault. Dr. Amaradaya worked beside her, carefully preserving the biological samples that had survived the attack. Vials of experimental vaccine, genetic research, medical data, each represented years of work, millions in resources, and the hope of an entire civilization. Her hands moved with a surgeon's precision, protecting these precious containers as if they were living beings themselves. Lieutenant Marcus Chen focused on the tactical analysis. His augmented reality display began to reconstruct the attack vector, weapon signatures, and communication patterns of the Krellnack's vessel. What emerged was a chilling picture. This was no random attack. It was a carefully planned extermination. "Look at this," he said, projecting a holographic reconstruction of the battle. The targeting wasn't random. They specifically aimed at our medical systems first. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura leaned in, his analytical mind breaking down the data. "It's systematic," he murmured. "They targeted our vaccine research, our medical databases. This wasn't just an attack on a ship. It was an attempt to prevent us from saving the Vorontal." The 17 survivors represented more than just individuals who had escaped. They were witnesses, data collectors, the living memory of a mission that had been transformed into something far more significant. Each of them carried fragments of evidence, sensor recordings, biological samples, encrypted data cores that would become more powerful than any weapon. Alina's cybernetic eye began to piece together a comprehensive narrative. The attack patterns, the precise targeting, the total destruction of medical facilities. It was more than an act of aggression. It was a calculated attempt to prevent humanitarian intervention. "Hypocrites," she commanded, "begin comprehensive threat assessment of Krellnack civilization." The AI's response was instantaneous. Vast databases of galactic information began to cross-reference, creating a complex profile of the Krellnacks. Their social structures, economic systems, historical conflicts, everything became potential intelligence. What emerged was a terrifying picture. The Krellnacks weren't just a military threat. They were a civilization built on systematic elimination of potential competitors. The attack on the Mercy wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern of behavior. Dr. Diop discovered something even more chilling in the biological samples. Evidence of genetic manipulation, attempts to weaponize the very plague they had come to fight. The Krellnacks weren't just trying to eliminate the Vorontal. They were experimenting with methods of total species elimination. "We're more than survivors," Alina said, looking at her team. "We're now the only hope for an entire civilization." Each escape pod became a node in a living, breathing intelligence network. Quantum-encrypted communication systems allowed them to share data, to analyze, to prepare. They were 17 individuals transformed into a single powerful entity, humanity's response to an unprecedented threat. As they drifted through space, they were collecting more than evidence. They were building a case that would reshape galactic politics forever. The Mercy had been destroyed, but its mission was far from over. The real fight was just beginning. The United Earth diplomatic complex transformed into a war room of unprecedented precision. Holographic displays lined the circular chamber, each one a window into a different sector of galactic power. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center, no longer just a medical director, but now the primary witness to a catastrophic attack that would reshape interstellar relationships. Ambassador Sophia Chen, a veteran of countless interstellar negotiations, reviewed the evidence with methodical intensity. Her team had spent the last 72 hours preparing a presentation that would do more than expose the Krellnacks. It would dismantle their entire galactic standing. "This isn't about military response," Sophia explained to her core team. "This is about total systemic exposure." The evidence was devastating. Quantum-encrypted data cores from the Mercy's escape pods revealed a pattern of calculated aggression that went far beyond a single attack. Biological research showed systematic attempts to manipulate genetic structures of potential threat species. Communication logs exposed diplomatic communications that painted the Krellnacks as architects of widespread genetic suppression. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura had spent the last day creating visual representations that would make the abstract concrete. Each holographic display told a story, not of military might, but of calculated destruction. Graphs showed the Krellnax's historical pattern of eliminating emerging civilizations. Molecular reconstructions demonstrated their attempts to weaponize biological systems. The first diplomatic strike would be precise and total. United Earth's approach was nothing short of surgical. Instead of immediate military retaliation, they would use the most powerful weapon in their arsenal: absolute, irrefutable truth. The diplomatic teams began reaching out to every galactic council, every independent species, every trading federation. Lieutenant Marcus Chen managed the communication networks. Quantum encrypted data streams began to weave a narrative that would be impossible to ignore. Each transmission was carefully crafted, each piece of evidence meticulously presented. They weren't just sharing information. They were building a comprehensive case that would isolate the Krellnax completely. "We're going to make them toxic," Sophia muttered, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. "Every potential ally will see them as a threat to galactic stability." Advanced AI systems began mapping the complex web of Krellnax economic and diplomatic connections. Each connection became a potential point of pressure. Trade routes, communication networks, resource agreements, nothing would be left untouched. The most brilliant aspect of the human strategy was its multi-layered approach. Military response was the least sophisticated option. Instead, they would create a diplomatic environment so hostile that the Krellnax would find themselves completely isolated. Dr. Elena Rodriguez presented the medical evidence. The experimental research from the Mercy became a weapon more powerful than any missile. She demonstrated how the Krellnax had not just attacked a ship, but had systematically attempted to prevent medical intervention for an entire civilization. "This isn't just about the Mercy," she told the assembled diplomatic corps. "This is about the fundamental right of species to survive." The presentation was devastating. Holographic displays showed the potential genocide of the Vorontal, the calculated nature of the attack, the systematic attempts to prevent medical intervention. Each image, each data point was a precision strike against the Krellnax's galactic reputation. Ambassador Chen looked at her team. "We're not just responding to an attack," she said quietly. "We're redefining the rules of galactic engagement." As the first diplomatic transmissions went out, a new kind of warfare began. Not with weapons, but with truth. Not with destruction, but with systematic exposure. The Krellnax would soon learn that humanity's most powerful weapon was its ability to reveal the truth with absolute, uncompromising precision. The real battle was just beginning. The United Earth Advanced Research Complex hummed with an energy that defied conventional understanding. Deep within its most secure facility, a team of humanity's most brilliant minds gathered around a holographic display that represented something far more than a simple technological project. This was warfare reimagined, a systematic dismantling of an entire civilization through pure technological innovation. Dr. Kazuki Nakamura, head of Quantum Systems Integration, stood at the center of the operation. His team had spent years developing technologies that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible. Now those technologies would become a weapon more precise than any missile, more devastating than any traditional military strike. "We're not just interrupting their systems," he explained to the assembled team. "We're going to create a technological environment that becomes progressively more hostile to their existence." The first wave of technological intervention began subtly. Quantum encrypted algorithms started to infiltrate Krellnax communication networks. These weren't simple hacking attempts. They were adaptive systems that could predict and counter any defensive measure the Krellnax might implement. Lieutenant Elena Rodriguez, a different Elena from the medical ship, but equally brilliant, managed the initial infiltration. Her specialized team had spent years studying Krellnax technological infrastructure. Each system they touched would begin to degrade in ways that would seem completely natural to an outside observer. Power grids began to experience mysterious inefficiencies. Transportation networks developed increasingly complex routing problems. Communication systems started to develop inexplicable latency issues. To the Krellnax, these would appear to be internal technical difficulties, but each was a carefully engineered piece of a larger strategy. "Watch the cascading effect," Dr. Nakamura murmured, his fingers dancing across a translucent interface. Holographic displays showed the progressive breakdown of Krellnax technological systems. It was an elegant dance of digital destruction, each intervention designed to look like a natural system failure. The most brilliant aspect of the strategy was its adaptive nature. The technological systems didn't just attack, they learned. Every defensive measure the Krellnax attempted would be immediately analyzed, understood, and countered. It was a form of technological warfare that went beyond simple disruption. It was comprehensive system manipulation. Dr. Amara Chen, a specialist in adaptive algorithms, explained the core of their approach. "We're creating an environment that progressively becomes more challenging for their technological infrastructure. It's not about immediate destruction. It's about long-term systemic degradation." Quantum communication networks began to develop mysterious interference patterns. Navigation systems would provide slightly incorrect routing information. Manufacturing systems would experience microscopic inefficiencies that would compound over time. Each intervention was so subtle that it would be nearly impossible to detect as an external attack. The team worked with a precision that bordered on artistry. They weren't just disrupting technology. They were creating a comprehensive ecosystem of technological challenge. Manufacturing systems would develop inexplicable supply chain issues. Communication networks would experience gradually increasing complexity in routing. "Think of it as a living system," Dr. Nakamura told his team. "We're not destroying, we're transforming." Specialized AI systems began to map every potential technological connection within the Krellnax civilization. Each connection became a potential point of intervention. Trade networks, communication systems, transportation grids, nothing would be left untouched. The most terrifying aspect of their approach was its patience. This wasn't about immediate destruction. This was about creating a technological environment that would progressively become more challenging, more complex, more impossible to navigate. As the first wave of technological interventions began, the team watched their holographic displays with a mixture of scientific curiosity and strategic intensity. They weren't just attacking a civilization. They were rewriting the rules of technological engagement. The technological noose was tightening, and the Krellnax wouldn't even realize until it was far too late. The first signs of systemic collapse appeared almost imperceptibly. Within the heart of the Krellnax central governance complex, senior administrators began to notice subtle changes that defied immediate explanation. Communication channels developed unexpected complexities. Resource allocation systems became incrementally less efficient. Each small disruption seemed insignificant on its own, but together they created a growing sense of technological erosion. Admiral Krelax, the most senior military strategist of the Krellnax command structure, stared at the holographic displays with increasing frustration. What had begun as minor technical anomalies had transformed into a comprehensive challenge to their entire civilization's infrastructure. "Explain this," he demanded of his chief technical officer, his voice a low growl of mounting anger. The technical officer, System, looked genuinely confused. "The systems are functioning within acceptable parameters," he reported, "but something feels different. Our predictive algorithms are becoming less accurate. Our communication networks are developing unexpected routing complexities." What the Krellnax leadership didn't understand was the true nature of the attack. Humanity had created something far more sophisticated than a simple technological assault. This was a living, breathing system of technological pressure that adapted faster than any defensive mechanism could respond. Colonies began to experience inexplicable resource allocation problems. Supply chains developed microscopic inefficiencies that compounded exponentially. Communication networks started to develop strange latency issues that made coordinated responses increasingly difficult. The brilliance of the human strategy lay in its subtlety. This wasn't about immediate destruction. It was about creating a progressively more challenging technological environment. Each system the Krellnax relied on would slowly become more complex, more difficult to navigate, more impossible to control. Dr. Kazuki Nakamura watched the unfolding scenario from United Earth's Advanced Research Complex. Holographic displays showed the progressive breakdown of Krellnax systems with a precision that bordered on scientific artistry. "We're not just attacking their technology," he explained to his team. "We're fundamentally reshaping their ability to function as a cohesive civilization." Quantum encrypted algorithms continued their silent work. They weren't just disrupting systems. They were learning, adapting, creating an environment of increasing technological complexity. Manufacturing systems would develop subtle inefficiencies. Transportation networks would create increasingly complex routing challenges. Communication systems would experience gradually increasing interference. The first major cracks began to appear in the Krellnax colonial systems. Outer colonies started to experience significant resource allocation problems. Communication with central governance became increasingly challenging. Each colony began to feel more isolated, more cut off from the central support systems they had always relied upon. "It's like the entire technological infrastructure is slowly pulling itself apart," System reported, his voice betraying a growing sense of panic. What the Krellnax leadership failed to understand was the true nature of the assault. This wasn't a traditional attack. This was a comprehensive reimagining of technological warfare. Each system was being transformed, adapted, made progressively more challenging to navigate. Internal conflicts began to emerge. As technological systems became more complex, the carefully maintained social structures of the Krellnax civilization started to show significant stress points. Leadership groups began to fragment. Communication between different administrative levels became increasingly difficult. The most terrifying aspect was the patience of the assault. This wasn't about immediate destruction. This was about creating a progressively more challenging environment that would slowly but inevitably lead to complete systemic collapse. Admiral Krellnax realized too late that they were facing something entirely unprecedented. This wasn't an attack that could be countered with traditional defensive strategies. This was a comprehensive reimagining of technological engagement. The Krellnax civilization was unraveling, and they wouldn't understand why until it was far too late. The United Earth Diplomatic Assembly convened in a massive spherical chamber that seemed to float among the stars. Holographic displays surrounded the representatives, each one a window into the progressive dismantling of the Krellnax civilization. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center, no longer just a survivor, but a key witness to a transformation that would reshape galactic politics forever. Ambassador Sophia Chen approached the central platform, her movements precise, her demeanor a perfect blend of diplomatic finesse and unyielding determination. Behind her, a comprehensive dossier of evidence materialized, a devastating record of the Krellnax's systematic attempts to suppress emerging civilizations. "This is not about revenge," Sophia began, her voice carrying across the chamber. "This is about establishing a new paradigm of galactic cooperation and protection." The evidence was overwhelming. Quantum encrypted data cores reveal a pattern of aggression that went far beyond the attack on the Mercy. Biological research demonstrated systematic attempts to manipulate and suppress emerging species. Communication logs exposed a civilization built on strategic elimination of potential competitors. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura had spent months preparing the visual presentations. Each holographic display told a story of calculated destruction. Graphs illustrated the Krellnax's historical pattern of eliminating emerging civilizations. Molecular reconstructions showed their attempts to weaponize biological systems. The Galactic Confederation listened in stunned silence. Representatives from dozens of star systems watched as the comprehensive case against the Krellnax unfolded. What had begun as a single attack on a hospital ship had transformed into a complete exposure of a civilization's fundamental approach to interstellar relations. Lieutenant Marcus Chen managed the communication networks. Quantum encrypted data streams wove a narrative that would be impossible to ignore. Each transmission was a precision strike against the Krellnax's galactic standing. The most brilliant aspect of the human strategy was its comprehensive nature. This wasn't just about military or diplomatic response. This was a total systemic exposure that would fundamentally reshape understanding of interstellar interactions. Dr. Amarada presented the medical evidence. The research from the Mercy became a weapon more powerful than any missile. She demonstrated how the Krellnax had systematically attempted to prevent medical intervention for entire civilizations. This is about more than a single attack, Dr. Diab explained. This is about the fundamental right of species to survive, to develop, to exist. The Galactic Confederation began to fracture. Civilizations that had previously maintained diplomatic relations with the Krellnax now found themselves re-evaluating every interaction. Trade agreements began to dissolve. Communication channels started to shut down. The technological disruption that had been carefully engineered by human teams now reached its most critical phase. The Krellnax found themselves increasingly isolated, their communication networks developing inexplicable complexities, their technological infrastructure progressively breaking down. Admiral Krelax, once the most powerful military strategist of the Krellnax, watched in horror as his civilization was systematically dismantled, not through military might, but through absolute, irrefutable exposure. "We are redefining the rules of galactic engagement," Ambassador Chen said softly, her words carrying the weight of a fundamental transformation. The Krellnax were not just being defeated. They were being comprehensively dismantled as a cautionary tale about the consequences of aggression against those who represent hope and healing. As the final pieces of evidence were presented, it became clear that this was more than a response to an attack. This was a fundamental reimagining of interstellar relations. Humanity had done more than defend itself. It had established a new paradigm of galactic cooperation. The memorial stood as a testament to something far greater than a single moment of tragedy. Constructed on a neutral planetary platform, it was a living monument to the survivors of the Mercy and the countless lives saved by their extraordinary response. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at its center, her cybernetic eye reflecting the holographic displays that told the story of humanity's most profound diplomatic triumph. 17 pillars rose from the central platform, each representing a survivor of the initial attack. But these were more than simple memorial markers. They were interactive historical archives, each telling the story of how a single act of aggression had transformed galactic understanding. Ambassador Sophia Chen approached, her movements measured, her presence a reminder of the diplomatic masterpiece they had crafted. "We didn't just respond to an attack," she said quietly to Elena. "We redefined what it means to be a civilized species." The memorial was more than a monument. It was a comprehensive historical archive that would serve as a warning and a beacon of hope for emerging civilizations across the galaxy. Interactive displays showed the comprehensive breakdown of the Krellnax civilization, not through destruction, but through systematic exposure and diplomatic precision. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura had designed the archival systems. Each holographic display told a multi-layered story. Visitors could explore the technological intervention, the diplomatic strategy, the medical research that had been preserved against impossible odds. It was a living museum of human innovation and compassion. The surviving medical research from the Mercy had become something extraordinary. The vaccine prototypes developed during that mission had now saved multiple civilizations on the brink of extinction. What had begun as a humanitarian mission had transformed into a turning point for galactic medical understanding. Lieutenant Marcus Chen managed the memorial's communication networks. Quantum encrypted archives ensured that the story would be preserved with absolute precision. This was more than a historical record. It was a comprehensive lesson in diplomatic and technological strategy. "We're creating a new paradigm," Dr. Amaradiap explained to a group of young diplomats and researchers. "This isn't about military might. This is about preservation, about understanding, about the fundamental right of species to exist and develop." The memorial became a focal point for emerging civilizations. Young species would come to understand how humanity had responded to aggression, not with immediate destruction, but with a comprehensive strategy that valued life, understanding, and collective growth. Interactive displays showed the progression of the technological and diplomatic intervention. Visitors could explore how human teams had systematically created an environment that made the Krellnak civilization's collapse inevitable, without firing a single weapon. Each survivor of the Mercy was now a living legend. They had transformed from medical professionals to symbols of a new approach to interstellar relations. Their stories were told and retold, a testament to human resilience, compassion, and strategic thinking. The Galactic Confederation had been fundamentally transformed. New protocols emerged that protected emerging civilizations. Humanitarian missions gained unprecedented protection. The attack on the Mercy had become a turning point in understanding interstellar cooperation. Ambassador Chen looked at Elena, a moment of shared understanding passing between them. "We did more than survive," she said softly. "We created a new way of thinking about our place in the universe." As the memorial's lights shifted, creating a dynamic display of human achievement, it became clear that this was more than a memorial to a single event. This was a beacon of hope, a demonstration that compassion, innovation, and strategic thinking could be the most powerful forces in the universe. The stars outside seemed to shine a little brighter. Humanity had done more than defend itself. It had shown the galaxy a new path forward.